For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Though it may be known as America's pastime, baseball has spread across the world. Though the MLB is trying to come back, there is still some money to be made overseas, and Greg Peterson is going worldwide to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. From the return of baseball in the States to daily KBO picks, all the bases covered on the Baseball Betting Podcast with Greg Peterson. So here is the International King of Swing.
A special hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson. Got a great podcast for you as we're going to have a two-part conversation with our good buddy Curtis Rogers. Typically on most days with the way that this podcast is going to function in the final segment, it's going to be side and total on every game in the KBO. But what is very interesting about the Korean baseball organization is that it seems like every single Monday for them is going to be travel days. There are going to be some times in which they have double headers. We saw a few rainouts last week, so they're probably going to be making those up on Mondays. But going forward, there's probably going to be just not a lot of games on Mondays. So I'm going to be sort of taking these podcasts and just giving a little bit of a roundup as where we stand with regards to Major League Baseball. Do some look aheads with where things stand in the KBO as well. And as you guys know, Curtis Rogers is a man that has joined this podcast many times. He does pre and post game work for the Seattle Mariners, works out there with 710 ESPN, the official radio affiliate of the Mariners, and he also does some work with the John Clayton Show. So gonna have a nice two-part conversation. We're gonna talk to him a little bit about just a little bit of an outsider's view of the KBO. We're also just going to get his thoughts on these proposals that are being thrown out for Major League Baseball to try to come back. There are a lot of things in the hopper, I guess you could call it, and they are doing everything that they humanly can to come back. Right now it's sounding like the proposal is going to be an 80-game season. This is likely to be pitched on Tuesday. This is a lot of speculation, but we saw in the back pages of the New York Post a few days ago that it sounds like they're going to try for an 80-game season with sort of that three-region plan, the East, the West, and the Central. So we're going to be talking about the logistics of that, and we're going to be looking at some of the teams that might be able to benefit from all this. And Curtis is going to give me a little bit of a different opinion since I already did the interview. I already know what he said, but he's going to give a little bit of an interesting and good way of taking a look at what players and teams might benefit as well. So you want to be on the lookout for that. Going to be a great two-part conversation. I always love being able to answer your Twitter questions as well. At gunit_81 is where you're able to fire them in. If you send them via DM, well, those letters DM to me does not matter. And these questions can be pertaining to the KBO, general sports betting. If I've already addressed it on this podcast, I will politely send you the link, and that way you'll have the answer there. If I have yet to answer it, well, you are going to be getting that answered fresh on this podcast. Did not get in any today. Makes sense. Yesterday was Mother's Day. I'm sure that a lot of you guys were just enjoying it. It's been strange time, so anything that we can celebrate at this point is very good. But what we can celebrate is the fact that we did have some live baseball. I guess you could call it Saturday night / Sunday morning, depending on what time zone you're in. So let's give you a little bit of a recap of that and just get to know these teams a little bit better, since this is a pretty new league to most of us, including myself.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Hanwha Eagles were a pretty big underdog against the Kiwoom Heroes, and they got off to a pretty promising lead. They were up by a count of 3-0 after 4 innings. They were up 3-1 after the 5th, but it was the Heroes that were able to put up a 5 spot in the 7th inning, and this was a theme from Saturday / Sunday as the Heroes were able to take this game by a count of 6-3. It was Warwick Sepuld that wound up getting the start for Hanwha. In his first start with Hanwha, he wound up giving the team a complete game shutout, and he was good in this one. He went 6 innings, gave up 2 runs, but we are noticing that these bullpens are gas cans, and that's putting it very, very politely. And with Sepuld, I should say that he gave up 2 earned runs, 3 total runs. But with that said, the Hanwha Eagles, they wound up getting 2 innings out of the bullpen, and they gave up a grand total of 3 runs. We are looking for the front end. Oh no, Rodney of the KBO, and perhaps we have found it, as giving up 2 runs without recording a single out and taking the loss on Young Myung. I don't know what joke to make out of that one, but he wound up blowing the game. And in this one, he might actually be the worst American-born pitcher right now in the KBO. Jake Brigham only went 4 innings in this one. He went 3 1/3 in his first start. This was mainly because there was a fire that broke out in his first start, so he couldn't really control it. But in this one, he got a bit roughed up. 4 innings, gave up 3 runs, all of which were earned. He gave up a dinger. Being able to go deep for Hanwha is their American-born position player, Jared Hoying. This was his first home run of the campaign, so good to see him getting up off the mat a little bit. And for the Eagles, it's just been a little bit of a rough go of them on the offensive end. They have been consistent. They have scored approximately 3 runs in 4 out of their 6 games. In another game, they wound up scoring 2. In another game, they wound up scoring 8. But this is certainly a team that is lagging behind from an offensive standard. A team that was lagging behind on offense until Saturday/Sunday. That'd be the Kia Tigers, but they took it to the Samsung Lions by a count of 12-3. Young Hun Jung wound up giving Kia a very good start. He wound up going 6 innings. He gave up 2 runs, both of which were home runs, but both were of the solo variety by Lee Won-seok. And you also had Kim Dong-yup going yard for the Samsung Lions, but for the Lions, it was Baek Jun-hon, who just got absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree. He goes 4 innings, and in this one, he winds up giving up a grand total of 8 runs, but only 4 of which were earned. I had mentioned on the podcast yesterday that Kia seemed to have the worst infield fielding of any team out there in the KBO. In this one, the script was flipped. They actually did a very good job in the field, and Samsung, not 1, not 2, but 3 errors to really kill the cause there. In the bullpen from there for Samsung, they weren't able to do a whole heck of a lot better. They wind up giving up 4 runs over the course of 5 innings, so certainly not a good day for Samsung, as they right now find themselves a little bit behind the 8 ball as well. They are currently 2-4, but both of those wins came against a Kia Tigers team that, let's face it, there aren't a lot of high expectations for. Now we get to some more bullpen gas cannings, as I wound up having the run line Saturday night for the Doosan Bears against the KT Wiz. They wind up going up by a count of 10-3 going into the 6th inning, and once you know it, the game goes to extra innings. The Bears were able to somehow, some way, just muster out a win in this one. I believe it was Kim Jae-won who was able to hit a home run in the 10th inning that forced an 11th inning, because you had the KT Wiz, who on this podcast, as you guys know, are known as the Smiling Blobs, who were able to get a run in the 10th inning, and they were able to tie it up. I will say this, though. If you're looking for a guy that has a chance to duplicate what he did during the 2019 season in the KBO, that'd be Jose Miguel Fernandez. He wound up leading KBO with regards to total hits during the 2019 season with 197. Winds up going 4 of 6 in this one, including a dinger and 4 RBI, so he certainly got the job done there. And for the Smiling Blobs, they just did not get the start that they wanted out of Kim Min. He winds up going 4 innings, gives up 7 runs, all of which were earned, including 2 home runs. Bullpen from there actually was not bad. They were presented with a very difficult position, to say the least, and they performed admirably. They wind up going a combined 6 1/3 innings. They do give up 5 runs earned, 6 total runs, but they had to use pretty much everyone in their bullpen. Meanwhile, for Doosan, Lee Yong-chan, he wound up giving the team some very, very good innings at the start. He wound up getting lit up in that 6/7th inning, though. He winds up going 6 innings, giving up 6 runs, all of which were earned. Bullpen from there, they give up 6 runs over the course of 5 innings as well, so that has been a theme. And then the ESPN game that we saw on Saturday/Sunday as well, that saw some really bad bullpen pitching. It was the NC Dinos who entered into this one undefeated, going up by a count of 6-0 after 1 inning against the LG Twins. Well, the Twins storm back as they put up a touchdown in the 8th inning, and they get a 10-8 comeback win. For the LG Twins, their foreign-born player in Roberto Ramos, he was able to really light it up in this one. He had not 1 but 2 home runs, and taking a look at how he did in the Colorado Rockies organization, it shows that the Colorado Rockies have no idea what in the world they are doing, which is why they were so poopy during the 2019 MLB season. They just don't know what they're doing with their farm system. He goes deep twice. You also had, getting a home run in this one, Yu Kang Nam. He has had 16-plus home runs in each of his last 3 years in the KBO, so this is a little bit of a stalwart there. And then for LG, what else was big was Kim Yong-soo. You may remember him from his time with the Baltimore Orioles and the Philadelphia Phillies. He delivered a go-ahead hit, and Chae In-sung went deep in that 8th inning as well. This is someone that is really able to supply some boom. During the 2018 season in the KBO, had 25 home runs and 119 RBI. And for LG, you expected a little bit more out of the starting pitcher in this one, Casey Kelly. I believe that he had went 6+ innings in like all but 2 of his career starts in the KBO. This is his second year, but he just wound up getting completely lit up. NC Dinos, if you watch the broadcast, they were just hitting a bunch of Texas leaguers and grounders that just found the right area. He goes 2 innings, gives up 6 runs, 5 of which were earned. He was hurt by his fielding, but this was the one bullpen that decided that they were going to show up on this day. As 7 innings from the LG bullpen, they give up 2 runs. That is a tip of the hat. In the KBO, that's like New York Yankees-esque bullpen performance. So that was terrific. Meanwhile, for the NC Dinos, Kim Young-gu, he wound up giving the team 5 innings and 3 earned runs, and then from there, Im Chang-min and Kim Jong-tae, they gave up a combined 7 earned runs in that inning, and they didn't even get out of the inning. So Gun was just absolutely gonzo in this one. We're looking for our Fernand, oh no, Rodney, and right now he is a very good candidate for it. And then we saw 1 under on Saturday as well. That involved the Lotte Giants and the SKY Verns. Lotte had scored 7+ runs in each out of their first 4 games of the season. They wound up not being able to get there, but Action Dan Straley had a tremendous performance as Lotte went to 5-0, 4-0. They get the victory for Mr. Straley. His first 10+ strikeout performance ever since the 2017 season. He wound up striking out 10 in his first 5 innings. He goes a total of 7 innings, 11 strikeouts, 3 hits, did not surrender a single walk. He actually looked very good. And then from there, the Lotte bullpen was able to clean it up. And for SK, a big surprise for this team was Kim Tae-hoon, who was a reliever for pretty much his entire career. He has made 196 career appearances in the KBO. This was just his 13th start, and he actually looked very good. 6 innings, he gave up 2 runs. Very promising. SK actually has one of the better bullpens that you're going to find. They wound up giving up a combined 2 runs in 2 innings, but they just weren't able to overcome the fact that they were unable to hit Mr. Dan Straley. And in this one for Lotte, Dae-ho Lee, a guy that you're going to hear a very funny story about, to say the least, from Curtis Rogers, because he used to play for the Seattle Mariners. He wound up going hitless in this one, but the guy that was able to supply the power, the foreign-born player, Dixon Machado. And this is someone that you're going to want to watch out for in the KBO. Mr. Machado was in the Cubs AAA organization last season. He has gone deep already 3 times so far this year. He has gone deep in each of his last 2 games, so he is certainly on a terroristic run with the Lotte Giants. And the Giants were actually dead last in the KBO last season. Right now, they're off to a 5-0 start, so I do find that to be very fascinating. And if you're taking a look at the KBO in general, you've been noticing a lot of overs so far. Over 60% of games have went over the total. We saw overs go 4-1 on Saturday/Sunday, depending on what time zone you're in. So big takeaways from the KBO. Keep in mind that last year in the KBO, the average runs per game that a team was scoring was right around 4.5. So perhaps we're going to see a little bit of regression. Perhaps the batters are out in front of the pitchers, because as we know, a lot of the American-born players, they were in quarantine for 14 days. That's going to affect a starting pitcher like a Kelly a little bit more than maybe a batter. So those are the takeaways that we had from the KBO on Saturday/Sunday. And coming up next, going to have a 2-part conversation with our good buddy Curtis Rogers of 710 ESPN and Seattle Mariners pre- and post-game. We're going to talk to him a little bit about what he's noticed from the KBO, and then from there, we are going to be talking about baseball's plan to get back here in the States. And that is on the other side right here on the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson.
Greg is calling in a pinch hitter from the Overtime Network hotline.
And we are back here on the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson. It is great to have on our next guest a good friend of this podcast. He is a friend of our college basketball podcast, Hoopin' with Hoops, which you can find on wherever podcasts are downloaded, the same podcast platform that you download this podcast on. And this is a man that does a great job of a little bit of everything. You can hear him on the John Clayton Show. He does terrific work for the ESPN affiliate out in Seattle. And you can follow him on Twitter at A Kid From Kent. When the baseball season does wind up ramping up, whether that be 2020, 2021, or when dinosaurs roam the earth, if they aren't already out in the lovely country of South Korea, he'll be ready there doing Seattle Mariners pre- and post-game work. As it is Curtis Rogers joining me right here on the podcast. And Curtis, how are you today?
Greg, a heck of an intro as always. Always appreciate it. Doing good here. I think the last time we talked on this podcast, or on the many podcasts we've done over the years. It was kind of around the time the news of COVID-19 had just hit, and, every sport had just hit the pause button. Now we're in the thick of it here, and it's interesting to see sports kind of pick back up a little bit. Obviously, you mentioned South Korea. They're playing baseball in Taiwan. We saw NBA teams voluntarily return to their practice facilities this week. So it's cool to see that sports leagues are sort of heading back to work here. Now, who knows if the virus is at a point where it's okay to re-enter the workplace like a lot of these leagues are doing. But just as sports fans, as consumers of sports, it is a breath of fresh air to finally see actual real-life competition out there.
Oh, I am right there with you. And speaking of the fact that we actually do have a baseball season, it's not going on in the Americas right now, but rather out there in the lovely country of South Korea. As you mentioned, Taiwan has been getting their season up and going as well. And actually some fans out in Taiwan as well, which is good to see. But did you watch at all any of the first week of the KBO? And if so, what are your thoughts on it?
I did. I watched a little bit of it. I certainly watched opening night, which was opening day over in South Korea. It was 10:30 Pacific time where I was. It is an interesting product, and I think it can serve as sort of what to expect when Major League Baseball returns, because I don't think there's anybody out there that is preparing for fans in the stands in any Major League ballpark or any American sports ballpark for the next, couple of months, maybe even a year or so. It was a good brand of baseball. I think how a lot of talent evaluators see it, they go, obviously Major League Baseball is number one. And then I think the Japanese league is number two, then AAA baseball. And then between AA and AAA, that's where they kind of slot in the KBO. And that's a good brand of baseball to watch. I know I've watched a lot of minor league baseball. Got a good representation of teams out here in the Northwest. It is a passable brand of baseball for sure. Now, obviously, there's so many, unknown names out there playing in the KBO, but there are some, guys who made it to the major leagues, but were fringe major leaguers at best, but now they're cutting their teeth over in Korea, and it's kind of interesting to watch those guys do it. Tyler Saladino comes to mind. Preston Tucker, who got a shout out on Saturday Night Live over the weekend. So, those are a couple of guys that if you've, really been into baseball over the last 5 or 6 years at the major league level, you definitely remember hearing their name and hearing, them contribute, just a little bit, but they're getting their time to shine over in Korea. And hey, why not take advantage of it? It's a nice, holdover until the real deal Major League Baseball season gets going. And, from what we've been hearing, it sounds like we're about a month away from the second go around of spring training, which I'm, anticipating definitely something that I'm waiting on bated breath for.
I am right there with you, as we do have our good buddy Curtis Rogers joining me right here on the podcast. And I must say this as well. You forgot that Seattle Mariners legend Dae-Ho Lee is back in South Korea. He is lighting it up for the undefeated Lotte Giants. Him and his 1 year at the Seattle Mariners. So we've got a little bit of that going on.
One of the great cult heroes in Mariners history. I had heard from somebody within the organization, that guy one time on a road trip in Texas, that he was suffering from heat stroke at one point, and they suggested, why don't you go, drink some Gatorade or whatever back in the clubhouse. And instead, he pounded a 6-pack of ice cream sandwiches to get his blood sugar level back in straight order. Whether that's true or not, it would fit for Dae-Ho Lee. He was fun to watch in his 1 year in 2016. He had tremendous power, but outside of being a DH, there wasn't much room for him on the field. But he was incredibly fun to watch. And, I'm glad to see that he's back playing ball over in his homeland of South Korea. And yeah, he's a fun one to watch.
Ice cream sandwiches. That's going to be the new name of this podcast. Handicapping guys that eat ice cream sandwiches with Greg Peterson. As we know, Curtis Rogers joining me right here on the podcast. Oh, dear. Well, it's going to be tough to top that, but we certainly got our fill of KBO action there. So coming up next, we are going to be talking to our good buddy Curtis Rogers of 710 ESPN a little bit about baseball's plan to come back here in the States. And we're going to be talking about some logistical hurdles that might be facing them. And he's also going to give me a little bit of an interesting take as to who he thinks might be able to benefit more than others from a condensed 2020 MLB season. And that is on the other side right here on the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson.
Welcome welcome back to the Baseball Betting Podcast with Greg Peterson as we're off to a quality start, and now it's time to walk it off in a grand fashion.
And we are back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson. It is great to be rejoined by our good buddy, Curtis Rogers. He does tremendous work with 710 ESPN and pre- and post-game work with the Seattle Mariners. You can follow him on Twitter at A Kid From Kent. He also does a tremendous podcast, Seattle Sports Saturday, which you can find where all podcasts are sold. And we were talking a little bit about the KBO in the first segment. Now let's shift gears and let's get back to the States. The MLB is certainly going to be trying to, as we mentioned, they are trying to come back. It looks like if the MLB does come back according to what they're thinking right now, they're going to have about like an 80 to 85 game schedule. I've seen a lot of people saying 82. I've heard some people saying 80. It's going to be somewhere in that neighborhood, and it would start up in very early July. So 4th of July is essentially when you'd have a kickoff for baseball, which I think is pretty much the most American thing that you can get. But I do think that there might be some logistical issues because, as we know, states are opening up at sort of their own pace. We saw in Florida over the weekend, we had the UFC fights. They are open up for business. Georgia, likewise. You're getting some of the Midwest states that it seems like they're getting a little bit closer, but we're out here on the West Coast. We know that like the states of Oregon, Washington, California, they've been taking a much more cautious approach. And what I fear is that you might have a team like the LA Dodgers, the LA Angels. They wind up having to play like their first 40 or 50 games on the road, sort of like a minor league team that's having their stadium built. I know all about this because I remember the Brewers with, I believe it was Colorado Springs a few years ago. They wound up going through this along with their team at Biloxi.
Sheesh, yeah. It is a fair point to make there, especially I think it was the state of California said they had banned large gatherings through, I want to say, at least September, maybe even through the rest of the calendar year. As we know, the Dodger game is a sellout every night. And Angels games, they get good crowds too. So they're going to be looking different. There's 5 teams in the state of California. All 5 of them, are big movers and shakers right now, except for maybe the Giants. But the Padres, they've been spending like crazy. The Dodgers, obviously, the best team in the National League over the last, half decade or so. The Angels made a big move with Anthony Rendon. The A's are always competitive. So it'll be weird to see just how Major League Baseball is able to balance this out, especially with, as you said, states kind of choosing on their own how to reopen. I know here in Seattle, they're not really projecting anything further out beyond the governor's stay-at-home orders, which their most recent one was through May 31st. And then after then, they kind of reassess where it's going to be when it expires or if they're going to extend it. And the Mariners, they were the first team in Major League Baseball. This is before the league shut down, essentially, to say, hey, we're not going to play our games at home. And so I would imagine even with Major League Baseball starting up, I have a hard time seeing the Mariners returning to Seattle anytime soon. I know there was a lot of talk about them playing their home games in Peoria, the site of their spring training facility. So that could be a possibility. It'll be crazy to see. I do think the 3-division format with where they merge the West, Central, and East divisions between the American and National League, I actually do think that that is a feasible option, and you would play basically your entire division the whole season. It would cut down on travel. You wouldn't have teams from the West Coast flying to the East Coast and vice versa. And I think that could work. I really do. And hopefully Major League Baseball doesn't try to stick with the old regime just for the sake of, tradition, because at this point, tradition, you can throw that out the window because we're in such an uncharted, territory that I think anything new should be, viewed with open eyes. I think Major League Baseball can really kind of set the example for these sports that are looking to return and saying, hey, the old way of doing it, it will eventually get back to that point, at least hopefully get back to that point. But right now, it is just not possible. I think Major League Baseball can really set the tone.
I totally agree with you, as we do have Curtis Rogers, a.k.a. Kid from Kent, joining me right here on the podcast. And what I think is so interesting is that with the most recent proposal that we saw with what you just mentioned, the 3-region plan having the East, the West, and the Central, that would involve all of the teams playing in their home ballpark. I almost think that what you could do, because we know that the Western states, they're a little bit more cautious to open up than these teams out there in the East. Maybe you have the East and the Central teams playing their home ballparks if things work out that way, but maybe have that proposal that we saw initially, have everything in Arizona, have that for the West. And I think that that could be a way in which baseball gets around it, because the reason why South Korean baseball is back in our lives is because the longest road trip in the KBO is about 240 to 250 miles. All these teams, they're able to travel by bus. That makes things very convenient. With this regionalized system, you're able to do that. And that way, if a player does test positive, because we know at some point with just everything, you could take all the measures in the world, someone probably is going to test positive, just seeing how the numbers are in this country. That way you can prevent everything from shutting down, and at the same time, you can still get in the games.
And to that point, I believe Major League Baseball this weekend released the findings of their study where they tested members of 26 of 30 organizations across baseball. And of the 5,700 people that were tested, only 60 tested positive for the antibodies of the coronavirus. So, like you mentioned, it is just so incredibly tough to figure out where this virus is going to strike. And 60 of 5,700 doesn't seem like a big percentage, but, divide that by the 30 teams in Major League Baseball, that's an average of 2 people per organization. What happens if somebody tests positive during the season? Are they going to have to shut things down again? What is the protocol with that? That remains to be seen. But I think, limiting travel is an incredible way to fight this. And like you said, in South Korea, the teams are so closely together geographically that they're able to limit their travel, or at least make it so that there's not a whole lot of outside contact. I know in Taiwan, it's kind of the same thing too, where teams are very close together geographically. And I mean, those are both two countries that have been able to keep it at bay, keep this COVID-19 at bay. It's amazing to see that in Taiwan, they're allowing up to 1,000 people in the stands right now. And we're in May, and they had their first little bit of it at the beginning of 2020. So it does give hope for Major League Baseball. Maybe by the end of the regular season, we start to see fans return to the stands. I don't think we're going to see full sellout crowds for a while, probably deep within to 2021 before we're even approaching that. But right now, I think that study of 60 of 5,700 people across Major League Baseball, it looks, like it's a minuscule number, but when you look at it from a different angle, it's still 2 people per team. And as we know in the NBA, we saw, Rudy Gobert test positive, which then led to Donovan Mitchell testing positive. We saw 4 members of the Brooklyn Nets test positive. I believe a Los Angeles Laker tested positive too. Yeah, one person may have it, but then another person could have it. And the toughest part is a lot of people don't know when they have it. So I think Major League Baseball, though, they've consulted a lot of medical experts, a lot of medical professionals. I think they know just what's at stake here. They're going to do everything they can to make sure that, safety is a huge, huge thing, and probably priority number one. It should be priority number one if Major League Baseball does return, within the next month or so.
Now, I don't encourage anyone to be cheering whenever someone gets COVID-19 or anything like that. But Curtis, you also forgot that James Dolan tested positive for COVID-19. The entire Twitter universe was very, very sad about that one. I think we saw all the memes that posted up, as we do have Curtis Rogers joining me right here on the podcast. Certainly, we are hoping for as few positive tests as possible. But with that said, what I do think is also going to be very fascinating is with this 3-region plan, which it looks like we're going to be getting. If we don't get this, we maybe get like the 3-tier plan in which you've got games played in Arizona, Texas, Florida. So we're probably going to have something like this. It's going to lead to a universal designated hitter. And I think that that could lead to a little bit of a shakeup with some of these National League teams. I feel like actually the Milwaukee Brewers are very well set up for this, because what I think is going to happen, because with all the proposals that we've seen for Major League Baseball, is that you have about a 3 or so week second spring training, maybe a couple days more, maybe a couple days less. I just don't know if that's going to be enough time for these starting pitchers to prepare, because I feel like this quarantine time is toughest on them. Now, I did see video of someone like a Trevor Bauer. He's been able to actually throw to a few of the guys that stayed in Arizona for spring training, but there's just no way to be able to really simulate live action. I think it's toughest on them than everyone else. And I think that the teams that this shortened season is going to favor are the teams that have great depth when it comes to pitching. I'm talking about the Tampa Bay Rays. I really like what I see out of them. A team like the San Diego Padres, especially with them having a guy that can close out the ninth inning like Kirby Yates. I think that these are the teams that could be the sleepers as long as we do get a 2020 season.
Yeah, and I also think it's going to benefit a lot of young pitchers, too, who would normally have innings limits. But since the season is going to be so short, you mentioned the Padres, Chris Paddock comes to mind as somebody who was given an innings limit last year. And I think that organization is really trying to guide him along as easily as possible, but they still kind of have the training wheels on. But let's say it's an 80-game season and he's only making, about 15 to 20 starts in there. That's nowhere near a full season's workload. So I would imagine teams are going to be a lot more open to pitching young pitchers later into the season. Who knows when this season is going to end? If they're able to get, 80 to 100 games in plus a full postseason, then we're looking at mid-November, late November when this thing wraps up. But I think that could be another, benefit to the shortened season is that young players will get bigger opportunities. And, you don't have to worry so much about the heavy workloads considering that they're just not going to be able to have a regular workload.
I do agree with you, but speaking of a man that does have a very heavy workload and is able to overcome it so well, that'd be you, Curtis. Would like to close it up with this. Let the good people at home know what you're all working on and how they can follow you on social media. By the way, I've had some very good teases to let you promote yourself. I think that was the best one yet.
Yeah, I think so. That one's going on the mantle right there. We're having a lot of fun coming up this week on the John Clayton Show on 710 ESPN Seattle. You can catch that Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. Just a lot of Seahawks speculation right now with Jadeveon Clowney still being a free agent and whatnot. What's holding that situation up? NFL schedule reaction, which happened late last week. And then, just waiting on baseball like we've been talking about here, just kind of hoping and playing that waiting game. It feels like we're getting closer and closer, which is a great feeling. You just hope that it's not at the expense of anybody's health or anything. So, if you're listening out there, still do your part, wash your hands, do the disinfectant. Stay home if you don't have anywhere to be. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg, and always a pleasure.
Always great to have Curtis Rogers on this podcast. So a big thank you to him. And if you do like what you're hearing on this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you ever have a question for the podcast, fired into my timeline at Junior_D1. We are back to daily. We didn't have any KBO action today, but KBO picks and so much more coming your way tomorrow on the Baseball Betting Podcast with myself, Greg Peterson. So thank you so much for tuning in.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.